The webinar is now broadcasting to attendees. Hey, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Cory and I just got in a fist fight, so he left. No, just kidding. He's gonna go. He's filling up his water bottle right now, and should be back here. Hey, there he is. Wonderful. Hey, nice Aeron chair. I was just telling everybody that you and I got in a fight, and then you stormed out.
Yeah, stormed out.
Yeah, stormed out. Who we got showing up here? Oh, we got Dan Grossberg from Clyde. Hello, Dan. He's probably wearing a Sonar shirt again to plug those guys. Who else do we got? Oh, we got Ryan we got Ryan here. We got Pete Mickartz from Beyond Pricing. I know that we got one of his questions dialed in here. That should be fun. Who else is showing up here that I saw ahead of time? Oh, wonderful.
We got Walt.
Is Walt here?
Walt's here.
Oh, there he is. Oh, that's nice. They do it alphabetically. All right, Walt. That's phenomenal. We'll have because I know that we got one of his questions here. We got Brees from, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Brees from Senbird had a wonderful question last time. All right, everyone's super punctual this week. That's good.
Yeah, either that or we're going to have another 100 people show up here in 4 minutes.
I know, right? Exactly. Last week, Karen and I were like, la 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 la.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Hey, 1 second. Well, this is good. Okay, so since we have I'm going to call it the quorum. Since we've got a quorum, we can start jamming here. So yeah, so let's get the party started here. So hey everyone, thanks for showing up to Sales Strategy office hours. I'm Pete Kazanjian, our guest, Cory Bray. A little bit more about Cory here in a second, but just a little bit of a background on Sales Strategy office hours. This is something that I end up doing quite a bit with individuals, hashing through their hardest sales strategy or hardest sales operations or management problems. And frequently people would say like, we should probably just like do these publicly. This is super fun. It's great to dig in. It's great to answer questions. But then in this case, we get externalized to other folks. And I grew up listening to Car Talk. I grew up in the 90s listening to Loveline. And so I realized that if we just did that with sales strategy stuff, we could help people out in a big way. So we do this. We promote people from the audience who have questions. We talk through their question with them, and then we try to jam through around 5 or 8 over the hour here. So that's the overview. A little bit of a background on me. I'm Pete Kazanjian. I'm one of the founders of Modern Sales, the nation's largest sales operations enablement leadership community. A lot of the people who are attendees probably know about Modern Sales, but if you don't, check it out at modernsaleshq.com. I'm also the founder of Atrium. Atrium makes sales performance analysis software that continuously monitors rep performance metrics across SDRs, AEs, et cetera, et cetera. So I love sales geekery is the upshot. Cory, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, sure. I'm Cory Bray, and as Pete has alerted me, what'd you tell me I have, Pete? Hockey hair?
I'm jealous.
Yeah, so we're gonna go with that. I have a hair attention deficit disorder where it just kind of transfers from short to long, and you never know what you're gonna get. So I'm Cory, managing director, co-founder of ClozeLoop. We're a sales consulting firm. We write books. We've published 5 books. We've got 3 more on the shelf ready to rock. I think some of the people that I see here in the chat have read some of the drafts. Thank you for your early feedback. And on the consulting side, we work with a lot of companies that are either struggling to get the most out of their existing sales team, they're anxious about how they're going to hit their sales targets in the future, or they read one of our books, they tried to implement what we've got written down, and they want a little help. So those are the things that we typically do over at ClozeLoop, and we have a lot of fun. Hang out with people like Pete.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a huge fan of ClozeLoop books. We send them out for incentivized demos.
Yeah, he's one of my best customers. He's you probably bought 400 books from me, huh?
I buy wholesale, yeah, for sure. We offer people copies of Jason Jordan's Cracking the Sales Management Code, you guys' sales enablement book. I think we have the sales development book as well. We have Trish Bertuzzi's sales development book. We have Jeremy Donovan's leading sales development. But yeah, they're phenomenal. We use Sendoso to fulfill them after the fact. It's like, hey, you want one of these really rad books? All right, come do a 30-minute disco call with us, and then send them out after the fact. Everyone loves them. Everyone has a good time, etc. So yes, I am well familiar with the ClozeLoop catalog, as it were. Okay. Wonderful. So we've introduced, I'm going through my Asana checklist here. So we've introduced everybody here. For folks who watch this on YouTube after the fact, check out Modern Sales at modernsaleshq.com. That way you'll be able to see more of these in the future. Then also you can just subscribe on YouTube. Eventually we'll podcast these, but I think those are the things. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to jam through around 5 to 8 questions here. Try to keep it moving, keep the time, keep the time per question kind of constrained here. I think the first one that we were, I have some questions that were asked ahead of time, but go ahead and if you have specific questions that you'd like to have answered, you can just chat them into the chat room, chat questions here, and then Cory and I will pull folks out of there. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with Walt from Avocat Group, or Avocat. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. Walt, I'm going to go ahead and promote you to a panelist, and then and we can kind of go through your question here. So let me go ahead and promote you as a panelist. I always mess things up in Zoom when I do this. Hey, there he is. Hey, buddy. You are on mute. I'm going to unmute you. Hey, did that work? You there?
Hello, testing.
Hey, phenomenal.
Hi.
Yeah, so the way that we do this is just go ahead and introduce yourself and what it is that and very briefly what your organization does on its sales motion, and then we can get into your question. Sound good?
Sure, sounds good. So my name is Walt Batansky. I'm with Avocat Group. We help companies to reduce operating expenses on their leases and build flexibility into them. We also help companies to go through the buy, lease, build scenario. So we have a very long consultative approach, typically from the time we get engaged until the time we're through the process with a client is 9 months on about average, can go up to a year or 18 months occasionally.
And that's the delivery period, not the sales cycle. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
So most of these are commercial office leases. If you think any of the high rises that you'd see downtown or big box industrial distribution centers, we help companies to negotiate those leases on the tenant side. So lots of the companies that because their signs are in front of those properties, they represent landlords. We represent the users inside. Okay, and got it. At any given time, those leases average 5 years. People have at least 6 months in advance, 18 months before the leases expire. So that's kind of our golden period. So at any given time, only 20% of the market is really ripe for our services. So because of that, we have a very long sales process, a consultative approach. Typical sales metrics like just tracking dollars or even quite opportunities, the lines get kind of blurred because we might start a conversation 2 or 3 years in advance. We might stop by and see them. Hey, next time we're in the area, we'll stop by your place. So we just have a hard time defining what good sales metrics are, and wondered what insight you could give us or suggestions.
Got it. So we're talking about, the question is long sales cycle, and also has like a very interesting, I don't want to call it seasonality, but it's kind of like seasonality insofar as there's a time when it matters for a given client. And so I guess it's a compelling event, a very compelling event thing with a long sales cycle. And it sounds like it's pretty high ASP. And so the challenge associated with that is what's the right way to instrument this? Cory, you wanna take I think these guys are a client of yours. You wanna take a first shot at this?
Yeah, they're a client, but we work with them on the sales skills side, not on the sales ops side. So Walt's coming to get a little
Wonderful.
extra on top of this. So I mean, the way that I would look at it is, can you map the market and identify who are all the people inside of a market that can buy from us? And that's typically the things that we look at with the clients that have really, really long sales cycles, because you can gather that data over time and identify these are the potential people that can lease. When are their leases up? And then of the people whose leases are up within a given window, then we can start looking at some interesting metrics within there. So of the people who are going to be leasing the next between 15 months and 9 months from now, how many of those have we converted into a conversation? And look at that by salesperson, look at that by market segment if you're looking at the top end of the market, or maybe the lower end of the market. And so you're basically just reframing and reshaping the conversation, so then you can apply more traditional conversion metrics to see how the teams perform. That's my guess. Pete's Mr. Sales Analytics over there, so I'd love his stab at it too.
Yeah, so yes. I happen to run a sales analytics company. So yes, I probably have some opinions here. There's a couple of things that I'm going to go ahead and chat into the chat room here. So this is a guide on setting sales metrics right there that I just chatted in the chat room, and we'll put it into the show notes after the fact. And I put another one into the chat room just now on sales metrics inspection and diagnosis. But like at bottom, the way to kind of think about sales performance analysis and like metrics is, one, like sales is just a question of a high quantity of high quality selling activity. And so then the question would be, okay, well, how do we instrument the quantity and the quality of the selling activity that's going on? And do we understand what the metrics are that describe that are appropriate for our go-to-market? And then what are the right levels associated with that? So, what are the metrics that we're going to track? What are the right levels we should be attaining of those? And then we have to go about the work of actually doing that. So I think the interesting thing with you guys is, how big are the ASPs on the deals that you guys sell?
ASP. Sorry.
Oh, the average deal size, average selling price.
About $20,000.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and so the way that I would think about it is, you can kind of break down, what has historically been the amount of like selling activity that a rep can do. How many reps do you guys have?
Well, we've got so we're not completely divided into SDRs. So we've got 3 dedicated SDRs and a few other kind of part-time SDR account managers.
Oh, so you're more focused on SDR metrics as opposed to seller metrics? I was looking at this more from the standpoint of the people who are closing business.
Well, in a perfect world, we think that we're going to move to an SDR account manager model. This is we're just kind of made this transition this year, so the lines are still a little bit blurred on that as well.
Got it. Okay. Well, so then the thing that I would do is, so maybe I actually would even generalize it more and just say, cool, what do we expect that our reps should be doing in a given week? Right? They should be having this many customer-facing meetings.
Right.
Should they be doing prospecting? Okay, how much prospecting? How many unique accounts should they be engaging with overall? How many net new accounts would you expect them to be engaging with in a given week? Or maybe a week is actually too small of an aperture, because you have 8 people who are acting as SDRs and 8. So maybe it's essentially like, this is how many new accounts we expect you to be interacting with on a monthly basis. And this is how many total accounts we expect you to be interacting with on a monthly basis. We expect you to be having this many customer-facing meetings. And this is how many opportunities we would expect you to have in your pipeline. And this is how many new opportunities we would expect to be flowing into the. And so I think that those would be some examples of very meat and potato metrics that you would want to start keeping track of. And then in order to understand what the right levels are, you might say, well, how have we been doing historically? Right? Which of our top performing reps or even middle performing reps, what levels have they been hitting of those metrics. And then we can set an expectation on those KPIs and say, okay, well, based on what we've seen historically, this is where we think people should land on a weekly, monthly basis. And then once you set those expectations, now you actually have to recurringly inspect on it. Cool, it's Monday, or actually, usually it's metric Sunday for a sales manager. Cool, it's Sunday. How do we do last week? And by the way, it's the second Sunday of the month. How are we doing so far this month? Right.
Yeah, and if they don't hit the quantity, then you coach quantity. And if they hit the quantity but don't get the results, then you coach the quality. So you've got a real focused area on where you can coach.
Precisely.
Yep.
Right. So I think that the answer to your question is that, like, first, decompose what it is that you think these folks should be doing, what they should be filling their week with, what they should be filling their month with. Break that down, kind of like from a time and motion standpoint, and then KPI that, and then iterate on it, because you're not going to get it right the first time. You can say, like, oh, this goal was too high, or oh man, they're blown out of the water, this goal was too low, right? Does that help, Walt, before we move on?
Yeah, no, that does help. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much.
Cool. Thanks,
Okay.
Walt.
All right, so I am going to change your role back to an attendee. Walt, thank you very much for asking the question. Wonderful. So yeah, that was a good one. Good starter. Let us go ahead and actually, is Pete Mickartz still here? He is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and grab Pete here. We're going to promote him to a panelist here. And then we have some other questions that are filtering in there. Hey, there's Pete. What is shaking, man?
Not much. Hanging, trying to get through,
It's delightful. Actually, Cory, you and Pete are neighbors. He lives down in Soma in San Francisco as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Wonderful. So Pete, go ahead and introduce yourself. Introduce Beyond Pricing, what you guys do, size of the sales org, and kind of like what your sales motion is, and then we can get into your really juicy question here.
Yeah. So I'm Senior Director of Sales at Beyond Pricing, head up our global sales ops, and team's about 14 folks, including a sales strategy manager. About, say, 8 here in the States, 6 in EMEA. Mm-hmm. And what Beyond Pricing is, we're a pricing algorithm for vacation rentals. So basically, we change prices daily, if not hourly, for the VR space, everything Airbnb and VRBO related.
Cool.
So nothing with the current pandemic has been like impacting your business at all right now, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it's not like we had 99.8% cancellations in April. So yeah.
Well, it seems like you're hanging tough. All right, so you have a question around new products, right?
Yep, exactly. So we're about 22% market share, at least North America side. EMEA represents about 50% of the world market. Of course, EMEA hit hard, global pandemic. We scaled back from EMEA in the last couple months. And we're expecting basically late this year, if not in 2021, to release a massive second product. And, fairly fortuitous timing, build or buy. And before you know it, now we've had about 3 weeks to plan for a massive second product to be released and to be sold starting July.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So it's been an interesting road. I mean, putting together in the last 3 weeks, putting together a full go-to-market strategy, right? And with our current team, I mean, we've legitimately met with between 80-85% of our total TAM, North America already. And with about 25%
for the existing product or the new product?
For the existing product. So
okay.
Much of the opportunities now are recycled, right? Coming through. So the second product is much needed, getting towards that 30% market penetration goal, which is fantastic in vertical SaaS.
Right.
But question I had is strategies, thoughts around whether to segment out the team for the new product, promotional path my BDRs have been with us, the least tenured BDR has been with us for 16 months. Mm-hmm. So we have a pretty long tenure overall, and they're looking for a promotional path. So I'm trying to figure out a way and engineer a way to not only obviously promote them, but as well as form an org, kind of a specialized org around this new product to at least get it off the ground initially. Sure. And then ultimately open up the floodgates, as of course the numbers for this new product are a little daunting. revenue wise.
Are you selling the new product to the same market as the old product?
Yes, it's the exact same customer. It's
Is
in the revenue.
Is it literally the same buyer, like the same human who decides, like, yes, I would like Beyond Pricing. I use Beyond Pricing to manage the pricing for our my family's ski house. But like the same person who makes that decision, do they also make the decision to adopt the new product as well?
For the most part, yes. So the interesting part about the new product is Beyond Pricing's core product has three kind of major market segments. There's a self-service, which you are in Pete, you can go in and sign up.
That's right.
And there's a SMB, which is, 5 to 10K contracts that senior BDRs can close, kind of get their feet wet closing business. That's what I'd formed as the promotional path to AE. And AE's average deal size being 26.5K, sales cycles being, lately they've been under 30 days, but historically been about 45 days. With the new product, it's about 3X the cost, 3X the TAM as well.
Sweet.
Yeah, so it's great. But it's a much different, more consultative sale. We are spinning the product in a much different way than anyone's ever seen it as well, structurally, as far as how they actually pay for it and historically how this industry has paid for things. So there's going to be a big educational piece, much like when we introduced Beyond Pricing, as far as how dynamic pricing works. We had to educate the market.
So
we're going to have to do the same.
Can the buyer buy both products, or are they going to buy one or the other?
They can buy both, absolutely.
Okay, got it. Okay, that helps. All right, so basically what you should do is you should get everybody on a Zoom for about 20 total hours and have the VP of product talk through all the different considerations that they made, have the engineers show some of the code, and then have the marketing people talk about all the great things that it can do, and then all of a sudden it just sells itself. Is that how I'm supposed to do this, Pete?
Cory, you're not supposed to give bad advice.
I know. Okay, fine. I'm gonna put my. How about we do the standing desk and we have some fun with this one? Okay. So okay. So the first thing is I'm just gonna give you my opinion, and you can agree with it or not. But I guess that's what we're doing here today. So the first thing is if someone's selling a product to the same market segment, and let alone the same person inside of that, it's a terrible buyer's experience to have to deal with two different salespeople. And
that is tough.
They're also learning. I mean, the folks are they're having the conversation. They're able to do discovery for product A and product B. They're there. So they should be having the same conversation. Now, in terms of product launch, what I described earlier was actually how a lot of companies do product launch, which is just asinine and silly in my opinion. So the key, the folks that I've seen do it well and do it light without having just crazy 17 enablement people involved is clearly define your target market, who do you sell to, clearly define the personas and know them, actually understand what they do. So what do they do all day? What's their pain? How do we win? What are some examples of folks that we won with before? And then be able to tell those customer stories, understand the types of resistance that they might have, objections, if you will. And then the key is whenever we do a product launch with clients, we typically use this framework that we call Pain Finder. And so we list out all the different features of the product. And then for each feature, we list 2, 3, 4 benefits of that feature in the second column. Then the third column, which is the only thing the sales team is actually going to use, is we ask the question, what problem would I have to have today to care about that benefit?
Right.
And so now I've got this list of problems that I solve, and then I keep going over on columns. So the next column is what personas does that problem apply to? What market segment does that problem apply to? What impact does solving that problem have on a scale of 1 to 10? How well are we positioned to win against the competition on a scale of 1 to 10? So now in one sheet, and a couple of people that are on this Zoom have this sheet for their company, and I think they're well positioned to win because they actually understand this. In one sheet, you've got all your sales development folks, all your account executives, all your managers, very clear pictures. What problems do we solve, for whom, how do we win? And you use the features to get there, but we're not running around talking about features. You need product launch, lickety split, get these folks trained up and make them coachable day 0. That's my opinion.
Okay. Can I run by kind of how I was thinking about it and just get your input?
Yeah, totally.
Is that all right?
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
So a lot of what you mentioned resonates really well. At the same time, it worries me because the product we're launching is maybe a sliver above an MVP overall. So the idea,
it's sold less.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is where we're going to talk about. But keep going, Pete. But this is what we're going to talk about in a second here.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's definitely some parameters around, who we can sell to. It's not as big as, the pricing product.
Sure.
So basically I wanted to identify, really kind of put our ICP in a box, right? And obviously the territory is always kind of thing, and be like, okay, here are the 10 people that are prime for this new product, right? I mean, it's only been sold by the previous company for a short period of time. They were all over the place. Their sales motion, was terrible. But let's try it on a very small segment, figure out exactly what resonates, right? What features actually they like, what problems we're going to face within the sales cycle, what problems we're going to face within the product before we roll this thing out. Luckily, I won that battle with some of our strat and finance folks to kind of slow play this rollout a little bit, buy myself a little more time on the ramp, but just wanted to see if I'm thinking about that correctly in a way.
I think you're thinking about that exactly right. So to give you a little bit of perspective, I forgot to mention this in our in the intro. So I wrote a book. My background's not in sales. So 10 years ago, I was a product manager and product marketer. And when I started selling at TalentBin, my last software company, I had to go from being like a product founder to a sales rep, a sales manager, a sales leader. So I ended up writing, and so I have a lot of conviction around that, like the product person and the founder has to be either A, sells the first deals, or B, be very heavily involved in it. I think in general, like what you want to do is you want to have them selling the first deals. I dropped a deck into the in the chat room here that talks about this. They call it founder-led maturity model. And so it doesn't just apply to a startup. And Atrium is the same example here. So currently I have a handful of reps. I'm hiring more, but all of 2018 was like me selling Atrium because we had a thesis that automated performance analysis software that does the math for sales managers would be resonant. But I had to prove that by selling it. And so this actually applies. So you have to prove that the product actually solves the problem. Then you have to prove that somebody can sell that to somebody and they'll buy. Then you have to prove that they can adopt it and actually get the utility that was promised. Like that's the steps. Well, that applies to new products the same way that it applies to like the first product that a company has sold. And so the funny thing that Cory was talking about, like everybody get on a Zoom, is just like talking to them so my last company, TalentBin, was acquired by Monster Worldwide. And so they kind of approached it that way where, but like just dropping it onto the sales organization versus saying like, hey, let's start out and like prove that we can sell it into this, into our channel, and then let's scale that out over time. So some learning there were, one, like I don't think you guys are ready for like prime time, necessarily ready for prime time launch until you've sold 10 deals. I mean, it seems like these are kind of bigger, but like a statistically significant sample size that indicates that that this works, that people will buy it, and then we have like ROI KPIs on it, like, hey, look, it actually worked. Look, it delivered a bunch of like value back to them. Hey, and then of course we then turn around and then use that information to like sell to the next 10, next 20, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a really important thing. So then assuming once you pass that, I think that, Cory's right that it's a really awkward approach to like have a single point of contact, a single buyer, like talking to two different reps. That said, it can be very challenging to get reps who are used to selling the thing that they have in their pocket. Like we saw this at Monster, where the existing sales organization was extremely good at selling job postings, but we're less attuned to selling passive candidate recruiting software. So I think what you do there is you get specialists who are really, really good at that to start, and then they can act as an overlay. And they can be brought in. And then now you're not going to have that like that forever. Eventually, then what you need to do is get the other reps to the point where they can sell both. But that can be a very helpful transition plan rather than trying to get 15 reps to all be really good at selling this new thing together. Instead, we can be like, okay, well, let's just get two people to be super amazing at this, and then they'll be brought in post disco, to Cory's point, like, oh, cool, we got a live one.
I agree with that. Everybody should be able to sniff out if there might be an opportunity, though. So agree with Pete. Have that specialist overlay. Don't make everybody a deep expert. But like I said, they should be. Everyone in the company should be able to know these are the problems we solve for these people in these market segments. Figure out an opportunity to flip it over to the sales engineer specialist, whoever you've got that can help take it over the finish line. For sure.
Phenomenal. Okay, wonderful, Pete.
Cool, thanks, Pete.
You have an additional thing?
Just quick follow-up question to that. Knowing that we have this gigantic pool of customers already that our CSMs are managing, right?
Yeah.
common splits for referring over business, knowing that they are going to be basically a BDR for us throwing business over the AEs.
I would just spiff the hell out of it. That's what we did at Monster. I started giving Monster sales reps Amazon gift cards on the DL, because otherwise, like, they weren't sufficiently KPI'd on getting, like, it wasn't a priority for them, because like they weren't actually KPI'd on it from a leadership standpoint. So I just started being like, cool, $100. If you get us a demo for Talentpin, like, guess what? An Amazon gift card will show up in your inbox for $100. Until finance found out, and then I was in a shitload of trouble. But Cory, what's your take on that?
Yeah, make it interesting enough to them that they'll do it, because they're resistant at some. If there's nothing in it for them, why would they put their customer at risk? That's the way that a lot of CS people think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, my initial thought was some sort of 25-75 split, something like that. I like the spiff idea, a decent spiff idea, as commissions can get messy.
I like the spiff, and I always go back to coaching. Coach them on how doing that is going to help them develop skills that they're going to need in the future. Coach personally, understand everybody's long-term goals as an individual, and figure out how you can tie that activity to something that they want to achieve 5-10 years down the road. And then you'll get the spiffs help accelerate that, but having that personal buy-in helps a lot too.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, great to see you, Pete.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
luck, dude. All right. Wonderful. That was a good topic, huh?
Yeah.
That's a meaty one. All right, wonderful. So it looks like Vishal from SIFT Science is here. I guess there's SIFT now. He's got a good question here on sales coaching on call recording. So I'm going to go ahead and promote Vishal here. Hey, there he is.
Cory, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Excellent.
Doing well.
Good to see you. So Vishal, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, introduce the organization, size of the sales team, kind of rough parameters of the deal cycle, and then we'll get into your question here.
Sure. Vishal here at SIFT. SIFT helps online businesses prevent credit card fraud and fake account creation and account takeovers. So essentially cybersecurity for online businesses.
Cool.
Sales org of about 15 people, about 10 to 12 SMB mid-market, and 3 enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Average deal size about $4,000 a month, so 36 to 48K ARR. Sales cycle 60 days, 75 days or so.
It's pretty fast for that big of a bite, but yeah, that's sweet. All right, wonderful. And then phenomenal. And so you had a question around call review tools. I'll read it right now. You can give us clarification too. So how call review tools like Cory or Gong made the job of sales manager easier and harder. I love how you brought that up. What tactical lessons can we learn from sports coaches who for decades have used film review to fine tune their team's performance? Anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I guess one thing I would add is I tried to get educated on all the books, of course, Pete, that you mentioned, vis-a-vis Cracking the Sales Management Code. I've read several of Cory and I believe it's co-author Hillman, their books as well. And I'm trying to figure out whether this new tool of call recordings what are the emerging best practices for it? And has this fundamentally in some way changed the expectations of sales managers?
Sure. Cory, you do a little bit on coaching.
We do.
You want to take a shot at this?
We actually have
goal, so to speak.
We have a coaching book coming out, and if you send me a LinkedIn, I'll let you have the preview. It's actually a novel, and I wanted to write a novel.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, because people get sick of my bullet points sometimes. We want to change it up a little bit.
These are bullet points in paragraph forms with characters.
Yeah, no, that's story, man. No, yeah. So I guess the question is, did it make it harder? I don't know if they're doing it. I mean, coaching shouldn't be hard. Coaching, if you're good at it, it's fun. It is work. You have to do it, but it's like anything else. If you apply a framework to it, it's something that's fairly mechanical. If you go out and try to reinvent the wheel every single coaching conversation that you have with somebody, it's a ton of work and it makes it really hard. And so the idea that we have, I'll just run through this framework real quick. Maybe it's helpful to folks on the line, is that when you look at coaching, there's pre-work and there's what happens inside the coaching conversation. So before we go into a coaching conversation with a sales rep, we got a framework called coach. So the first C stands for challenge. We want to identify all the different challenges that Pete has. So we make a list of all the different challenges Pete has. No, come on, it's like this. But I can only coach Pete on one thing at a time. If I try to coach Pete on more than one thing at a time, it just doesn't work. So take that list of challenges. What is the one thing? And the one thing should be what can move the needle and what can move the needle quickly. And if you're running a formal sales methodology, if you've got a really strong sales process in place, a lot of times you just point to that one thing that you know. There's one of 10 or 15 items that is always popping up amongst your SDRs, your AEs, your CSMs, whoever it is. And you pick that one challenge. And then you figure out, is it a mindset challenge, a skill set challenge, or an activity challenge? Because if somebody's got a skill set challenge and somebody else has a mindset challenge and you try to coach them exactly the same, no, you're not going to get a good result. And that's where it gets really hard if you don't understand the difference between how to coach a skill set challenge versus coaching a mindset challenge. So then so that's the C. The O is outline the opportunity. So before we meet with somebody, it's just like pre-call planning for discovery call. Well, where do we think this call is going to go? Where do we think this coaching session is going to go? What are all the different questions I'm going to ask? And how am I going to get the salesperson to arrive at the fact that they have that challenge? And then the A's create an action plan. We ask a bunch of questions. We work together to co-create an action plan about what are they going to do. Well, first of all, arrive at the fact that that challenge actually exists, confirm that it is a mindset, skill set, or activity challenge, and then arrive at the fact, what are we going to do to fix it? Second C is consequences. What happens if we don't fix it? A lot of times in coaching conversations, we don't talk about consequences. We just have this chat, and consequences don't have to be dire. They don't even have to be negative.
No, that's what a PIP is for. You should wait until things are really bad and then have consequences, right?
Exactly. And then the H at the end of the coach acronym is hold accountable. Pete, over the course of the next week, what can we do to make sure that this action plan actually gets put in place? And then we work together to come up with I'm going to send you a call recording every day and highlight the specific point where I ask a pain-based discovery question. So that's it. And if you're doing that mechanically with your team every single week, it's not hard. The tools help you go find the challenges. And so that makes it way easier. So if it's on rails and you're doing it well, I'd say all these tools and everything are great. And the fun thing is, I don't know if anybody knows this, Dropbox, you can listen to calls at 4X. So you can just scan and then slow down and listen to the parts at 2X when you want to. I don't know, Pete, that's my answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. The Vishal, like, I think the question is, there's like, what's happening is Chorus and Gong are recording the entire, they're creating all of this recorded, like call recording, like wave files and then transcribed data. So if you're going through it and saying, hey, I have to listen to all of these, like obviously that's a ton of work. So that's obviously not tenable. So then the question would be like, okay, well then how do we jump into the places that are potentially important? And I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. So one thing, we actually find this with Atrium customers quite a bit, is that actually like numerical analytics, so metrics, can help indicate to you where you should listen, rather than being like, all right, let's go like digging through some hay and try to find some needles here. So we can see, hey, this rep right here, they have a really hard time getting past discovery. Like their conversion rate from disco to second meeting is like super craptastic as compared to everybody else. Oh, I know what we should do. We should listen to their disco calls, right? And that would be this rep over here. Whereas this rep over here, maybe he or she like has an aberrant conversion rate from proposal or contract to close. It's like, oh, they can't close. Well, maybe we listen to those calls and see what's going on there in order to inspect. So I think the first thing is you can use metrics to converge on which calls that you should be listening to. I think the other thing too is that like there may not be an issue that at any given rep with any given rep, their issue may not be one that requires listening to their calls. It may just like they may just not be doing enough activity.
Yeah. Right.
It may require looking at their emails. And so again, those things can be found in metrics like, oh, actually, it turns out that your follow-up meeting ratio, your conversion from first meeting to second meeting to third meetings is actually fine. You just don't have enough first meetings. Oh, okay. Let's figure out are you getting past as many opportunities as the other reps? Oh yeah, you are. Oh, well, are you doing your prospecting? Oh, you're not doing any prospecting work. Oh, okay, cool. So that's a different coaching conversation that has nothing to do with call recording. So I think like that's another way that you can kind of help with that is like pruning the decision tree and kind of figuring out where to jump in, or I don't have to jump in. I think that the other thing that you can kind of add here, and you noted that does this create a lot of work for people? It's got to be somebody's job to listen to calls, and it's got to be calendared, and it's got to be cadenced, and it's got to be KPI'd. We see this a lot where sales managers don't spend the time to listen to calls because maybe it's like, hey, here's a bunch of hay, go ahead and dig through it. Yeah. But what you can potentially do is say, hey, I have an hour on the calendar or 2 hours on the calendar. It's a recurring meeting invite where I'm supposed to go through and listen to, maybe say, hey, we're going to listen to every single disco call for our reps for the last week at 2x speed, and then give them coaching points on it. So at least like constrain I guess in both of these examples that I'm using here is constraining the problem space. In one case, I was saying use metrics in order to constrain the problem space on a per rep basis. In another case, was saying, hey, let's constrain how much time we're going to invest in this, and then also constrain the focus on it, whether it's disco or closing calls or what have you.
Yeah, and it doesn't take that much time if you know what you're looking for. So Pete is the example of conversion from disco to just demo, for example. Let's say that's the case. Okay, so run the report in CRM. Do they have next steps in the CRM? Or the next step dates in the future? Are these things that the prospect probably agreed to, or is it something the salesperson just typed in and said, follow up with Pete next week? And then when in your sales methodology do folks talk about next steps? Sometimes people talk about them at the top of the call and the end of the call, sometimes only the end of the call. And so use the call recordings to go scrub through a bunch of calls real fast. And in 20 minutes, you can get through a ton of calls and figure out, did they talk about next steps when they're supposed to, not write it down in Salesforce? Did they talk about them poorly? Did they not talk about them all? And so then you got a pretty good idea of where you can coach that one challenge this week and then move on to something next.
Wonderful. And then Cory, let's make sure that we can get a screenshot of the coach framework that we can put in the show notes.
Yeah, totally.
And
sure.
Just so folks can have access to it after that. I noted that down. All right, Vishal, that was super great. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you both.
Hopefully we'll see you next week. All right. So another question that we have here. Oh, Dan Grossberg, you've got a great question here. We're going to go ahead and promote you to a panelist. I don't know if you were on last week's or if you were on the week before, but you got a really good question here. So we're going to get into it. Hey, there's Dan. Oh, no sonar shirt this time.
No sonar. I went with the Gong shirt.
Oh, per Vishal's question. So Dan, can you just go ahead and give everybody like a really brief overview of Clyde's sales motion, the sales size of sales org, and then we'll get into your question here.
Absolutely. Yeah, Clyde is a super small sales org. There's about 7 total, split between BDRs and AEs, very new to market. And what we do is we help online retailers offer extended warranties. The question I had, given the market that we're in and the type of sale that we have, we don't have any recurring SaaS fees. So to help with forecasting, pipeline management, performance review, commissions, et cetera, it's a bit challenging because for our opportunities in Salesforce, I don't know what to put in for the amount field. So I can't imagine our sales reps do.
Yeah.
And we sell, they run the gamut in terms of who we sell to. It could be a 5 million annual revenue company to a 250 plus million. So obviously those are going to return a different revenue size to the company. So I was just looking for tips, guidance on how to best approach this challenge.
Yeah. Cory, can I take a shot at this?
This is your domain, man. Get it.
Yeah, sales nerdery, ops nerdery. Yeah, for sure. So, so just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, so Clyde does extended warranties, and so you work with e-commerce providers to allow them to provide these extended warranties. And so the problem is that you don't necessarily know how many extended warranties are going to be sold by this e-commerce shop that you work with or that e-commerce shop that you work with. Am I thinking about that right?
Precisely.
Yep. Okay. Yep, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You see this a little bit. There probably about like 10 or 20% of the customers that we work with at Atrium have what we refer to as like consumption-based models, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like Clearbit's a good example of this. Although they'll sell deals as well. Trip Actions is a great example of this, where Trip Actions makes money based on how much travel is booked through their platform. And so the problem is that ahead of time, you don't necessarily know all right, well, like how much travel is going to be booked through your platform, especially if you didn't know that there was going to be a global pandemic, for example. But you know, friends of mine ran sales at the company called Affirm. They kind of do similar stuff, like financing on you know, large purchases like Peloton bikes, which are doing quite well right now. So the way that these organizations usually go about this is they try to have, like, you know, a projected concept of what an organization could potentially do. So Trip Actions uses this concept called TBUM, travel budget under management, where what you do from a rep standpoint is it's important to, from a discovery standpoint, to figure out how much, you know, how big is the pie? How big is the pie that we could potentially take bites at here? The same is true with a firm. What they would want to understand is, you know, how much gross merchandise value goes across the rails of this vendor. And then what you want to do then is have some sort of credible expectation for what proportion of that you're going to take a bite out of. And so the question there becomes like, okay, well, is that the rep's best guess? Well, that's usually not a great idea, because especially if they're getting comped on it, like, whoa, your guesses keep coming in really high. It's so weird. So what you want to do there then is understand, okay, what is a credible amount, like conversion rate there? So one, we want to get this understanding of how much, you know, in you guys' case, I guess it would be extended warranties, right? Like how many transactions are being done by this customer? What proportion of them are, you know, look like they're going to be applicable from an extended warranty standpoint? What is the attach rate there? And then if you have historical data, you can like apply a general conversion rate there and say, cool, this is the value of this op. Now, obviously, you saw this you can see this with a firm or Trip Actions as well. Sometimes you're going to get organizations that have like super high conversion rates, and sometimes you're going to have organizations that end up coming in under. But like what we're trying to do is we're just kind of trying to do this ahead of time, and then we of course need to look back and see, okay, did it actually get there? So I think that like what you want to do is KPI on the front with rules of thumb, and then from the back end, like on a cadence basis, maybe it's probably like every quarter. It's probably not every month necessarily, because that would be a lot of overhead for a single ops guy. Go back and say, hey, are our conversion rates still valid, or do we need to update the new conversion rate that we use for the coming 90 days? So it's not an easy job to solve. Like Stripe has the same problem as well. But those are the approaches that I've seen people implement there. Cory, do you have stuff you wanted to add there?
No, that works. I'll throw out a crazy idea. Why would you even pay revenue-based commission for this type of role? I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying, could you question it and potentially do something where there's a salary, there might be a bonus, there might be a team bonus, there might be spiffs, there might be something tied to something the salesperson can control, because it seems like the outcome is pretty far from the day-to-day control of the seller. So if you need really experienced salespeople who have a lot of skills and background in selling, it's going to be tough to attract and recruit them probably. But if you can take people that aren't from a deep sales background and put them into this role, then you might consider reimagining how you compensate them.
Yeah, I think that's one thing to consider. A way of, obviously there's downsides associated with that, because now all of a sudden you're constraining your talent space. Another way that you could do this, which is actually kind of related to what Cory, it's like the blend of what I was saying and what Cory is saying, is maybe you just comp on a deal.
Yeah.
Deals are worth these. Like deals are worth, points. Like deals are worth this, and then there's upside if one of these, because obviously what we want to do is we want to motivate reps to, like, you know, do the marginal effort. It's the whole point of, you know, of variable compensation. And then we don't want them to pull bullshit into the pipe as well, right? So we want there to be, you know, validated, you know, qualification criteria. But if people are doing a good job of attacking good, like really great ops that have lots of upside, we want them to participate in that upside. Yeah. So maybe what you could do is like, like a deal is worth this, and then there's this upside associated with it.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Man. Cool. Trying to see who else.
Did we get Lauren yet?
I chatted her. Here, we'll try to promote her later. Dan, have a good one. Okay. Have a good weekend.
See you, Dan.
Take care, man. Yeah, let's go ahead and see if we can promote Lauren here. I don't think I had any materials that I wanted to share with Dan there. Hey, there's
Hi.
Lauren.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's go ahead and can you just go ahead and introduce yourself, the size of your sales organization, what your sales motion looks like? We'll get
Sure,
into
of
your
course.
question.
My name's Lauren Amanda Adler. I run sales for a very small company. We're about 10 people all in, and until 3 months ago, I was our only sales marketing revenue function. We've since
Wow.
hired people. I have now a full-time sales rep who is across the country from me, and a part-time marketing rep who I actually used to work with and personally recommended. And that
Oh,
actually
goodness.
brings me to, my questions, which, are kind of threefold here. The first one is like, how do I onboard and train and kind of establish rapport with my new hire when she's completely remote and we've never met, and there kind of isn't a time in the future when we're supposed to meet in person?
Wow.
Yeah. How do I manage someone who's my friend and who, if she's doing poorly, reflects poorly on me because I recommended her? And then since I also carry a full quota and the entire company's quota actually falls on me, whether my rep hits that or not, how do I balance managing a fully remote team with keeping my full-time quota in like the time of COVID when there's such a limited amount of time to call people, and I think we're all kind of stressed anyway. So yeah, lots of questions. Sorry.
This seems
It's
super
good.
easy. Yeah, it's no problem. We'll handle this in like 90 seconds.
You have,
It'll be
you have a switch you can flip over there, Pete?
So just imagine we're like, it's done. Like,
Yeah.
hey, here's the easy button. The
Exactly.
Staples
Totally.
easy button. Hey, fixed. Boink.
Fixed.
Do you know how much you could charge for that? My God. All right. Well, I guess we should. These are really great questions. I guess it's like three. So, Cory, you wanna break it down?
Yeah, I'll do remote onboarding first. So the thing with onboarding is a lot of times, it's not coming through. These things, expo
Whiteboard.
markers, are your onboarding program's best friend, because they do a phenomenal job of filling in all the gaps that you forgot to think through, that you didn't think through, that business has changed, new competitive intel, all these different things. So
Sure.
Can't do this much anymore because we can't go in the conference room and just whiteboard things. So I think that the thing I've seen folks have success with recently when it comes to onboarding is just really thinking through, what are all the competencies that I need to expect from my salespeople, and how can we define those? So when it comes to doing discovery, what are the specific things that they need to be able to do, and how can they demonstrate that? So from a knowledge perspective, if you think of Bloom's taxonomy, 6 levels of learning. So you remember, understand, and apply. Those are the first 3 levels. So do they know what to do? Do they understand why that's what they're doing? And then finally, can they actually do it? Can they do it in a role play? And can they do it in a live conversation? So taking all the things that you need them to do, and then judging those against at least those first 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, remember, understand, and apply, then gives you at least a gauge, is this person ready to go out and have quality selling conversations with the market? So that's it. And just be a little more rigorous around it than you'd be if you were just whiteboarding away.
Good one. All right. I guess we're splitting this up. So I'll take how do I manage someone who's my friend?
Everyone's Pete's friend, so this is a good one for him.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah. So I think the implication under that is, hey, there's a relationship here. I need to hold you accountable, but on the flip side, I don't want to, seem like I'm coming off unjust, et cetera. And so I think that it's not dissimilar to what Cory was saying around like having a very specific, well-stated expectation of what it is that we want this person to be doing. In the case that Cory was talking about, it's from a training standpoint. And I think in this case, it would be, hey, this is a set of expectations around, the behaviors that you should be engaging in, and how you should be filling your day, and how you should be filling your week, and how you should be filling your month. And then, so you start with that and say, you should be spending this amount of time having customer facing meetings, and you should be spending this amount of time prospecting, and break that down. And I think in your case, you've been, how long have you been selling there, Lauren? I think you said about a year plus.
Yeah, I think I started in September. Is that right? Yeah, September. Goodness.
Yeah. So the good news is you have a little bit of a reference architecture. You have you, right? So you just go back and look at your calendar for like the last 90 days, 6 months or whatever, and say like, okay, what is it that made me successful, right? Because from a sales maturity model, what we have is we have somebody who's a successful seller. And so essentially we have an exemplar of this. And so now the way that sales organizations work and get to scale is you just clone that out, right? And so what the first thing we want to do is say, let's model what made Lauren successful, and then parameterize that, and then say, wonderful, we're going to call your new rep Susan, right? So hey, Susan, these are the things that have made me successful. This is what my day looks like. This is what my week has looked like. This is what my months look like. And so like, that's how to be successful. By the way, what we're also going to do is we're going to KPI this, right? So just we're aware of it. So you're aware of it. You can't have 10,000, steps a day on, you can't necessarily, hit your 10,000 steps a day in Fitbit if you don't know you're supposed to have 10,000 steps, and then instrument it. So first, here's what made Lauren successful. Then let's break it down. Then let's set expectations around this here, and then let's measure that. And then not just let's measure it, but then let's make sure that we're coming back to it on a weekly basis, monthly basis, in order to say, wonderful. So how do we do last week? How are we progressing towards our goals, our precursor goals this month? And then that way, rather than it being like, oh man, Lauren's up in my grill because she's mean and a bad person and not my friend. It's just like, hey, we set this expectations from the get-go. By the way, I didn't make this up. This is what made me successful across the last 6 months. I want you to be successful. I want you to make money, right? Because what I need to do is I need to make you successful, because then I need to clone out 3 more of you, Susan. Like, you're special, I get it. But like, the way that we're going to, crush this as a business is we're going to get 10 seasons going. So I want to get you to success first, and then I'm going to move on to like cloning out more of those folks. So I think that's a way to really kind of like separate out any sort of like, like, oh, you're doing this because you're mean to me. Another really, of course, great resource on this is, so Kim Malone Scott wrote a book called Radical Candor. There's a really great article on First Round Review. That's kind of like the article version of it. It's like the beginner's version. That's a phenomenal resource to allow you to like have candid conversations that are not like emotion based. Like, look, I care about you deeply, but if you're not hitting your first meeting goal, this is going to be a problem, right? And it's not because I'm being mean to you. It's just like, I'm going to be candid about this. And then Cory, did you want to take a shot at the last question here on fully on managing team whilst running her own quota as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big time management thing. And I think if you do the first 2 things that we talked about, and it's very clear not only what the skills are, but also what the workflow is, like Pete was talking about, and you know what they're doing on a weekly basis. They're doing it on a weekly basis. I mean, one of the things I like is a lot of people are high performers. They don't need you to manage activity. So what is this person committing to on a daily, weekly basis? And are they doing it on a daily, weekly basis? And can they just report that out to you? Like, I'm going to do this many discovery calls, this many demos, and this many proposals, because I know that's what it takes to get to my number. Pete talked about sales math and the calculation when he was talking to Walt a little bit earlier today, and just being very clear around what does it take from an activity perspective to get to where I'm going? What am I doing this week? What did I actually do this week? And let that kind of manage itself. And so then your valuable time that you have to spend with them isn't around, well, did Pete do the activity? It's around, well, what quality did Pete do the activity with? And how can I coach him on something that can really move the needle, going back to the coaching conversation we had?
Yeah, and the more you can like automate that or systematize it in order to like reduce the time. So like, we make software that just automates this stuff. Yeah. And like, it does the bean counting for you. But the way you can kind of hack it is like, cool, this is my time on Sunday afternoon where I go through and validate that those KPIs got hit.
Yeah.
And if they did, cool, wonderful. I'm moving to my pipeline. I'm going to do my own pipeline management. If they didn't get hit, then I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I know in our Monday one-on-one, right, then I have an action item to address this shortfall. But one of the phrases I like to use is "the calendar is destiny." Is a recurring calendar invites to yourself to like time box when you're supposed to be doing a management task versus a selling task.
Yep.
Is a really great way of going about this. Cool. Did we hit the easy button, Lauren? It's all done.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't going to throw the wrench in there to be like, and the fact that all of my historical data was like pre-crisis and I can't apply it to right now, like any solutions there, but you know, I
Form
won't
a
throw that out your
hypothesis
way.
test.
I think it is pre-crisis, but like your activity levels aren't different.
Yeah.
And at least it's a starting framework. And
Yeah.
say like, look, and then we can iterate it, but at least we have to start from somewhere. Cory, you were gonna add something, man?
Yeah, just take the former data, form a hypothesis, adjust it up or down, whatever activity type or results, whatever it is. I don't know the industry, and then just make sure you track it.
Yeah,
And,
you do. Legal tech.
Yeah,
You were there.
Yeah. That's good. 2 of my legal tech clients are crushing it right now.
Yeah,
So,
no, we have actually like crazy increased demand because in a lot of cases we are a cheaper option,
Yep.
but for some people we are a luxury. So it's complicated. And you can tell like my issues are more managing my people and managing my time than they are, you know, trying to get
last
sales.
thing I'll say is, as I say this to everybody, if you think your product's nice to have or it's a luxury, the people on your team are going to amplify that attitude and they're going to think it's impossible to sell. So figure out the specific areas where it's a painkiller, where it's something that is absolutely must have, and make sure that's the only thing your team thinks about. Otherwise, they're just going to be off to summer vacation in their minds, and that's dangerous.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks, Lauren. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank
See ya. All right, we're done, dude.
Cool.
Was it? Did we solve everybody's problem?
I think we solved the world's problems. The United Nations just called. They said we're good.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. I heard a siren in the background. I thought they were coming for you again.
That's just, there's always a siren in the background.
I guess that's where you live.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we're done. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to go ahead and download this, throw it up on YouTube. We'll send out the recording to everybody after the fact. So for folks, we do this every Friday. We have great folks, with the exception of Cory, to join. Next week, we're having Stephen Brody from Bevy, makers of really amazing community software. He used to run BizOps and sales development at MuleSoft, so he knows a thing or two. For folks who aren't members of Modern Sales, go ahead and check it out at modernsaleshq.com. And thanks everybody for joining.
Can I give an offer, Pete?
Yeah, go crazy, man.
So if you go to trianglesalesframeworks.com, you can buy Triangle Selling for $1.
$1.
$1. They wouldn't let me do
$1.
free, so I had to do $1. I want to give it to everybody for free.
Triangle Selling Frameworks.
TriangleSalesFrameworks.com.
TriangleSalesFrameworks.com. Okay.
And if you're upset about the $1, send me a Venmo request.
All right, wonderful. Well, cool. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks, Cory. That was
Well,
awesome.
thanks, Pete.
Good job. Later.